The priest sex abuse scandal in the Buffalo Catholic Diocese is survivor advocate James Faluzak. You were a former priest, a survivor yourself. What are your thoughts, and give us your reaction to Fabian Maryanski and Mark Wolski, whose allegations were substantiated, now going to the Vatican?
This is, I think, this represents justice for the victims of these alleged perpetrators. For their cases to be going to the Vatican now suggests that they are beyond the ability of the Buffalo Diocese to resolve these two cases. They must be very serious.
And what about Roy Herberger and Frederick Leising, who are now being returned to active ministry?
Both of whom I know, one much better than the other. I've met Father Roy Herberger. He was very active at Hope House when I was a seminarian intern there with Sister Karen Klimzak. You might notice, I regard him as a fine man, and you might notice that when he faced his accusation, he immediately focused on the man who was making the accusation, suggesting that while Father Roy was not claimed not to be the abuser, he recognized that this man was hurting, and that he was feeling something, he had experienced something. Of all of the priests who've had allegations brought against them, he's the only one who really had showed any regard for the alleged victim.
Now, all of these priests are retired, so what then is the significance of these actions? We mentioned before that many of these priests continue to serve even after retirement.
Well, Fred Leising, for example, who was the rector of Christ the King Seminary when the 4 years that I was a student there, he has been working in parish ministry, helping out on weekends. I assume, as many of these retired men do, that they are assisting with funerals and baptisms, perhaps for former parishioners. Father Fred's case concerns me because the allegation that I brought against Father Joe Gatto, who was my formation director at Christ the King Seminary, the allegation that I brought forward happened under Fred Leising's nose, as did many examples of relationships, sexual relationships between students and faculty. We will be hearing more from victims of that nature in the weeks and months to come. But all of that happened under Father Fred's tenure,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's very upsetting to me to wonder what was the criteria that let them off the hook, because we know that it must have been something serious in all four cases. What is the criteria? What's the public criteria that the diocese uses? Without giving us details as to these cases, what were they judging in these four instances? Why does Father Maryanski really get docked, and appropriately so, while his classmate, who seemed to be a party to some of that behavior, walks free without any explanation? We deserve to know the criteria.
And you've long called for greater transparency from the Catholic Diocese, to release names, to release the files involving these priests and their victims. Is the diocese making any headway in being more transparent to what you'd like to see?
It's good to see that they finally, in a certain sense, disposed of 4 of these cases today. The victims have been hanging on these being resolved publicly. So I appreciate that there was that small bit of communication as to these priests' status, but the only rationale for them revealing that status is to take themselves off the hook. They haven't told us anything. They haven't commented to any degree on the nature of these allegations, when Father Maryanski's victim receives the largest compensation package in the diocese at this moment. What's the criteria? People in the pews deserve to know where their money is going.